America's top diplomat Antony Blinken is headed to Israel Thursday in a show of solidarity to discuss additional U.S. support for Israel in what's expected to be a prolonged war. Sandy?
Joy, thank you. And Joy's in Washington. Well, let's talk about diplomacy. Joining us now is Ferry de Kerkhove, former Canadian ambassador to Egypt, Pakistan, and Indonesia. Welcome. When there is this much violence, is it even possible to talk about a diplomatic solution?
In the short term, probably not, because you have to have a stabilization of the situation. The diplomacy would be in the feathers of those who are still fighting. But I think that diplomacy at the end will be absolutely essential, because even to release the prisoners or the hostage, you do need diplomacy, you need some considerable effort, and you have to calm the situation.
What about the involvement of other Arab nations? Israel was in talks with Saudi Arabia. That could well have been a trigger for the terror attack. Could any of those countries help with the solution?
The country that usually helps out on that is Egypt. The Saudis are sufficiently upset by what has happened and by the attack, legitimate attack by Israel against Hamas. But certainly the Egyptian and the Jordanian are always the one we turn to. And usually they have much more influence in the process. Let's deal with those who have done it before and who know how to do it, although it's going to be much more difficult given the immense damage on both sides of the fence.
Appreciate your insight, Ferry de Kerkhove. Thank you so much. Now, people with ties to both sides of the conflict have demonstrated in Canada, but it's the hate happening online that's raising concerns tonight. CTV's Vanessa Lee reports.
Competing demonstrations across the country, with pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli rallies after days of bloodshed. Occupation is a crime. While these gatherings were peaceful, Ontario-based Centre on Hate, Bias and Extremism says hate is on the rise.
We're seeing nice. Kind of online and offline celebration of the attacks in Israel, and not just coming from the far right, but anti-Semites of all stripes who are calling for violence.
Hate crime experts are trying to determine how many of those messages originated here.
What's wrong with you?
The Anti-Defamation League says it saw a nearly 500% increase in Telegram messages calling for violence against Jews and Israelis in the first 18 hours after the attacks.
The conflict there is going to continue to spiral, and so the hostility here will spiral as well.
Some Canadians are shaken, scared for what's to come. School boards in Toronto and Montreal are offering support to staff and students. Experts say it's crucial to talk to kids about what they have heard or seen.
It's very important to ask them what information are they getting online, who are they following, what are the sources of that information, are they credible, so they understand misinformation, polarization, all of the extremism that we're seeing online.
The UN Secretary General says this most recent violence does not come in a vacuum, but grows out of a long-standing conflict. He is appealing for an end to the hatred and bloodshed. Sandy, here's Vanessa Lee.
Coming up, no trial and no verdict. The legal fumble as sex assault charges against a former military officer are stayed. The RCMP has started a criminal investigation into the Ontario government's decision to open up parts of a protected zone for development. Backlash forced Premier Doug Ford to scrap his plan for the Greenbelt. An Auditor General's report revealed that preferred developers were tipped off in advance. 2 cabinet ministers and 2...
Do this quickly, all right?
Lieutenant General Trevor Cadieux has always denied sexual assault allegations against him, but there won't be a verdict in his case after a Kingston judge stayed the charges, citing an unreasonable delay and blaming military investigators. Someone should be held accountable for allowing 9 months to elapse before providing defense counsel with the complainant's first statement, Justice Larry O'Brien said in court.
All we can be certain of is a great many people dropped the ball in a great many ways.
Good shot.
Cadieux was about to be sworn in as commander of the Army in September 2021. Instead, military police launched an investigation denies sexual assault allegations against him from 1994. He was a fourth-year cadet at the Royal Military College. He retired from service, traveled to fight in Ukraine, and returned to face charges in June 2022. The judge determined his trial wouldn't finish until mid-February, more than 20 months after the charges were laid, exceeding the 18-month ceiling set out by the Supreme Court.
I can only imagine it's incredibly frustrating for everybody because there's no outcome.
In May, former Defense Minister Anita Anand followed a recommendation to transfer all military sexual assault cases to the civilian system, leading to more concerns about delays in an already overwhelmed justice system.
The legal system, all of that is woefully inadequate in dealing with these kinds of things.
There are questions about why it took so long for military investigators to disclose evidence. The Defense Minister's office says transferring all military sexual offense investigations to civilian police is a pressing priority. Kevin Gallagher, CTV News, Ottawa.
Coming up, showdown in Saskatchewan, protesting a controversial pronoun policy for schools. Dueling demonstrations outside the Saskatchewan legislature today after the province tried to fast-track a controversial pronoun policy for schools. CTV's Alison Bamford now on the new rules that give parents the final say.
What's become a divisive issue across the country is now dividing the grounds outside the Saskatchewan Legislative Building.
My identity is not all that I am, and yet I have to come forward before legislation and act as if it is.
Several hundreds protesting the government's plan to invoke the notwithstanding clause and legislate its parental consent policy, requiring permission for students under 16 to change their names and pronouns.
As a parent of a trans child, we feel it's important that trans people, especially trans youth, have a safe space in schools if they don't feel safe at home.
This is stuff that they can't unsee. They don't understand it. This isn't about hating the other side. This isn't about the division that the government has made it to be.
The debate spilled over inside the Saskatchewan legislature as MLAs were called back to session early to discuss the pronoun policy.
It does require legislation and does require the notwithstanding clause. We've been clear from the beginning. We'll utilize those tools if necessary. Today they're necessary, and ultimately that's why we find ourselves in the House today.
The Saskatchewan government attempted to introduce the legislation, but the opposition blocked the move.
There's a need to talk about what is actually happening in schools and what is not, first of all, to make sure that we're basing decisions on facts.
The province says the Parents' Bill of Rights Act will now be introduced on Thursday. If the bill goes ahead, groups protesting the policy say they are prepared to take further action, which could include a province-wide advertising campaign. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
After the break, NHL debut in Pittsburgh, a rising star faces off against his hero. Hockey fans were treated to a star-studded opening night of the NHL season. Built up as hockey's next big thing, Canada's Connor Bedard took center stage. This is TV's Bill Fortier.
Connor, welcome to the NHL, man.
Wow.
A historic moment in Pittsburgh as the puck hit the ice between the NHL's veteran superstar and the teenager who could lead the next generation.
The start of a new era in Chicago.
Connor Bedard was drafted this year first overall.
The Chicago Blackhawks are very proud to select from the Regina Pats, the Western Hockey League.
The year he was born, 2005, his idol Sidney Crosby was drafted and played his first NHL game.
I don't want to start the game, being starstruck or anything. I kind of want to warm up and anthem and everything to do that moment for me.
Connor Bedard on the roster.
Now Bedard is widely seen as the most exciting rookie in years.
So I absolutely think he is everything that he's been hyped up to be.
Some even comparing him to superstar Connor McDavid.
It's warranted to make these types of comparisons. Not because we're trying to force it, because Connor Bedard's made it pretty obvious that he's worthy of these comparisons.
You know, he can kind of take over and control a game. And here, he probably will be that player.
Bedard was the top scorer at this year's World Juniors, leading Team Canada to gold.
Trying to split the defense, does, cuts the front, scores!
And he dominated the WHL in his final year, tallying 143 points in just 57 games. That's 2.5 points per game, putting him right on track with Crosby's and McDavid's final junior seasons. With those comparisons, the expectations for Bedard are high. If the 18-year-old feels that pressure, he's not showing it.
You know, I'm just going to go out, play, and try to be the best version of myself, not try to be anyone else.
A talented teenager now taking on the best of the best on the world's biggest hockey stage. Bill Fortier, CTV News, Edmonton.
And that's our newscast for this Tuesday. Thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo for Omar and all of us at CTV National News. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow.